What's up, YouTube? This is Brian, also known as Sherwood Sound. This is a kind of follow-up to my top 200 rapping series that I did. I did 4 videos. There was top 200 rappers. I broke those videos into 4 different parts. If you want to go check those out, feel free. But this is kind of a statistical breakdown of all those rappers. It's kind of interesting for me to kind of look at the numbers behind just the rappers themselves, and breaking them down by kind of age and some other factors and metrics. Just a little quick follow-up video to those other videos. I'm going to get into actually my top 50 rappers of all time, which actually extended out to top 60 rappers of all time. But yeah, those are going to be my opinions. Again, the first group that I made of the top 200 rappers were a consensus list. So I combined lists of rappers from across the internet, various sources, music publications, bloggers, etc. And I compiled all their lists into one master list, and that's how I came up with the top 200 rappers that I'm going to be analyzing today. The videos that I'm going to release in the future will just be my personal opinion, and you can see how those vary. So without further ado, let's get into that statistical breakdown. All right, so here we are, the top 200 rappers of all time. A little bit of a statistical analysis, nothing too deep or heavy. I didn't do a ton of research. I just kind of broke down some numbers I thought might be interesting for anyone who wants to reference them. Again, I did the top 200 rappers list. If you can find out for who all these people are, which this analysis is based off of, you can go check out those other 4 videos on my channel. But let's get started. So here is a top 200 rappers list based on age. You can see that this graph depicts a pretty heavy concentration of top 200 rappers being in their 50s, a little bit more in their 40s too. You see some climbing in their 40s and then into their 50s. It's pretty definitive that age, we consider the golden era of hip hop the 90s. So therefore, we consider a lot of the best rappers to be rappers who were rapping actively in the 90s. So here's a little bit more information on that. A couple of facts about age as it stretches across the top 200 rappers list. The oldest rapper on the list was Ice-T. I thought that was pretty surprising, considered there's like some real old school rappers who we consider super old school rappers on this list. But Ice-T is older than those guys. I don't consider Ice-T to be like a super old school rapper, although he's definitely like one of the forefathers of gangster rap. The youngest rapper on the list was Baby Keem. This list started to be put together like a year ago, so this data is a little outdated. Baby Keem, we all thought was probably going to release an album by now. He still hasn't released a follow-up to the Melodic Blue. That album was amazing, showed a lot of promise, but dude, if guy keeps sitting, like has some kind of J Electronica syndrome going on and doesn't release something, then he's going to quickly fall off this list and probably doesn't belong on the list now a year after that first video came out. Um, the top ages to be a rapper was 50. There's 23 top 200 rappers who are 50 years old, which is pretty wild. 17 at 55, so that's a big drop off. And then another fairly big drop off to 54. Then you got 45 and 53. I did think it was pretty funny that the statistical breakdown shows that the best time to be a rapper is be in your early 50s, unless for some reason when this list was created that year were 52 years old. Because if you're 52, there's only 2 of you, but all the other early 50s are very well represented in the list. So, but if you're 50 years old, so what? You were born in 75. You have a pretty good chance of being one of the greatest rappers alive, or at least a better chance, I guess. Moving on. Here, this is a breakdown by age group. There's 9 rappers in their 20s, uh, 41 in their 30s, 49 in their 40s, 87 in their 50s, which is super wild, right? So if you look at how this is going to go, these rappers are going to keep getting older and younger rappers are going to keep going up. So to make room on these lists for younger rappers, those guys in their 50s and 60s, like they're going to start falling off the list probably because they have to make room eventually for the new guys, right? You can't just say that the old guys are great and none of the new guys are good. So there's going to have to be movement, and some of those guys in their 50s are going to have to get left off if these are recalculated in 5 years, right? Next up, what do we got? We got era. So this is a kind of a more even spread. Like the other thing was, this is like basically a bell curve. I mean, not really, but it is kind of a bell-shaped curve. The main reason I did included this is because just because you were in a certain age didn't mean that was the era when you were hot. Some guys strike it later. Some guys get popular when they're young. Some guys get popular when they're a little older. So this kind of shows which era these guys, various guys, were popular in. It is pretty interesting that it's pretty well spread. That means the top 200 list that we went off of was pretty evenly spread out by age. Obviously, there's not going to be as many young dudes. It takes a while to build up some cred before you're considered one of the best. But this is pretty evenly distributed between the 80s, 90s, well, not really the 80s as much, but the 90s, the zeros, and the 2010s. And there's actually a fair amount of people who are in their prime era right now. So, anyways, this is kind of interesting. All right, so mainstream or underground. This is completely arbitrary. I assigned these pretty much based off of how I felt about them. I do have a both category, which is rappers that I consider kind of both underground and mainstream. My vision for an underground rapper is a probably much narrower vision than most people's. Some people may consider someone like Killer Mike underground, or I'm trying to think of another good example. Um, Anyways, like somebody, he's a good example, right? I don't really consider Killer Mike underground. I mean, he's been collaborating with Outkast since like the late 90s, right? I mean, dude's been around. I can't really consider Killer Mike an underground rapper. Well, some people may consider him underground. Additionally, I mean, there's a bunch of other examples, right? So this was kind of based off of my arbitrary assignments of these kind of labels. You could probably combine my both with the underground and get a kind of clearer view. But this does go to speak to um, these lists where they're the top 200 rappers or whatever. They are heavily biased towards mainstream because those are the rappers that are going to get the visibility. Those are the ones who are going to be considered better than others just because they're out there. People are hearing them more often. People are comparing them more often. Is that necessarily fair? I don't think so. There's a tons of underground legends that are kind of being overlooked in this kind of system. But overall, because this was a consensus list, because it was pulled from sources across the internet, obviously the rappers who are more well known are more likely to get their names shouted out, more likely to make lists, and therefore this kind of consensus list is going to be heavily skewed towards more mainstream rappers. Now this is where it gets interesting. This is top 200 rappers by region. I know for a fact, you know, there's a lot of argument as to what coast is the best, and I'm a West Coast guy, right? I'm from the West Coast. I slightly favor West Coast rap, like not heavily or whatever, but I'm slightly biased, right? But this kind of clearly shows that New York still rules rap, or it has ruled rap, and pretty much has no sign of dropping the ball, right? They have a chokehold on the top 200 rappers of all time list, basically crushing it by almost 40% of all rappers on this list are from New York and its various environs. LA is second, but it's not close. And then you kind of have this close cluster. It's not really much of a cluster, but it's, LA, Atlanta, and Chicago are kind of the next up. Again, they have no chance of catching New York anytime soon, but they are well represented. Los Angeles, Atlanta, and New York. Then you kind of get another cluster that kind of goes down. I basically put everyone on this list who has more than two rappers or more on this list. You can see that New Jersey, Detroit, Florida. Didn't break down Florida. Most of them are from Miami. I think one of them might not be. But Florida, Oakland, or the Bay Area, Philadelphia, London, Memphis, New Orleans, Cleveland, Massachusetts, Boston area, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, and Virginia. But you can see basically the big four are kind of New York, LA, Atlanta, and Chicago. I don't think that's going to shock anyone, with New Jersey, Detroit, and Houston, and also having some pretty good, a lot with Florida and the Bay Area. Anyways, so that's based out by region. Then I broke down New York by its kind of sub area. I wouldn't call these aren't all boroughs, but the boroughs and other regional areas. Brooklyn is on top. I don't, again, that probably doesn't surprise anyone. Most New York rappers do hail from Brooklyn, or at least the big ones. Brooklyn's killing it, basically. You do have Long Island, which I thought was interesting that Long Island had so many rappers on this list. You don't really think of Long Island. The Queens is well represented as well, followed by the Bronx and Harlem. And then, you have Manhattan, Staten Island, Buffalo. I'm shocked that so many big rappers have come from Long Island. That's kind of surprising to me. But Brooklyn's definitely the Kings, followed by Queens and Long Island. All right, so now gender. This is kind of a sad. This is where it gets kind of sad. Again, this was a consensus top 200 list. Um, Unfortunately, when I do my list, which I'm going to do up next, it's probably not going to be too much different. It's a male-dominated genre. Is that right? Probably not. Should female rappers get more shine? For sure. There are some female rappers that are coming up who are exciting. That can definitely pick up any batons and maybe help fill this out a little bit. But yeah, it's a male-dominated, and the top 200 rapping list was also top 200 rappers list was also male-dominated. 94% male to 6% female. You'd probably want to see that closer to 20 and 80 at least, but it is what it is, right? I didn't skew the numbers just to include more females. These are the lists that were created, and when I aggregated them, that's what we got. Now, dead or alive. This is kind of an interesting one. I put here that there isn't a huge difference between rapper mortality and just the general population's mortality. Interesting fact is that 15% of people who are born, Americans specifically, don't make it to see their age 50 birthday. I and if you look at the top 200 rappers list, only 13% of them have passed, versus 87%, which are currently alive. Obviously, that's the contrast. But I put not a significant, it's a slightly higher rate of mortality than the general population. After thinking about it harder, though, because I didn't do a lot of like in-depth statistical analysis, I'm not a health statistician, right? So, it's probably greater than that because you got to think that probably that 15% that doesn't make it to age 50, a lot of those are probably children and, unfortunately, toddlers, babies. They have, a lot of those people pass. So when you compare that 15% to that 13%, well, all those kids never have a chance to become, great rappers because they never make it to their 20s. To be considered a great rapper, you at least have to make it to your 20s, right? So I would probably take that slightly higher and say it is generally higher than the mortality rate of the general population, i.e., it's, being a rapper is dangerous. Again, it isn't as high as I kind of thought it might be, just because of the I guess what am I trying to say? The perception that rappers are just always dying, and it's a very dangerous thing, and it's rappers are dying left and right. They are definitely dying more than is ideal, but it's not a crazy number compared to the general population, while it is higher. All right, so this is going to be, obviously this is a controversial one, maybe. I don't know if it's controversial, but you got to analyze it by race just because people get interested. People like to talk about white rappers and their effect on rap in general, and without me getting too much into that conversation as to what a white rapper's impact on hip hop is, African Americans, blacks still dominate hip hop. They dominate the top 200 list. There are, a fair amount of white people represented, probably maybe a surprising amount. I don't know. There's a lot of noticeable names that are there. And then I included a mixed category, just because it's hard for me to include people like Logic as black, and, various other people. There's a lot of mixed race rappers are very talented and well recognized amongst hip hop. There's Latinos. Latinos is definitely a growing population within hip hop, and there's definitely some big names coming up. The only Asian that was included was MIA. She's Sri Lankan, so she checked the box for one of the top 200 rappers in the Asian category. But that's about it. That's kind of, again, I didn't go into super deep statistical analysis. I will start putting out my own opinions. Hopefully you guys like this video. Please like and subscribe. I'm just starting out this channel and I'm not posting very consistently. If you want me to see me post these more often, well, subscribe and like and leave a comment, and maybe I will be encouraged to do it more. But yeah, I'm definitely going to put out a list of my top 50 rappers of all time. And I appreciate y'all watching. So that was my statistical breakdown of the top 200 rappers of all time. Again, that was a consensus list that was compiled across the internet from various sources to come up with kind of a master list of general opinion as to what the top 200 rappers of all time was. I will now be putting out a couple videos that are my personal opinion, so you can hear what a clueless middle-aged white man thinks about rap. I know everyone's excited to hear more about our opinions. So that video will be coming out shortly, hopefully. We'll see how long it takes me to get it together. All right, talk to you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.